Can a team of AI agents replace an actual accountant? In this video, I'll be going over a case study on how you can build a team of AI agents to replace an entire accountant, either for your own business or for other businesses. We'll be using a no-code workflow builder called N8N that requires no technical knowledge so that you can follow along and implement it yourself. So this is what our entire AI system looks like with a main agent here, as well as sub workflows to handle either revenue or expense processing inside your business. Now this lays the foundation of an AI system that can replace accountants, and because everything is dynamic, which I'll show throughout the video, you can fit this within either your own company or your clients to make sure that everything is integrated with your own company's financials. Now, before we continue, if you want to get this template and join an active community of AI builders, as well as full in-depth guides on building real working AI agents, either for yourself or for other businesses, make sure to click the link in the description. So looking through our system, we first have a main AI agent here that can read through all of your company's financials. So this includes accounts receivable or revenue and accounts payable or expenses. So with this, you can essentially chat with the AI agent to update or get analysis on all of the revenues and expenses of your company. So you can think of this as the central hub of your main AI system, and you can chat with an accounting assistant either to get quick analyses on all of your financials or to make any changes on the go. Now below this, we have a team of AI workflows that each perform an individual accounting task. So this is broken out by expenses on the left, and this is what we pay or what we owe to other companies or software. And then on the right are all the invoices or revenue that we've earned or people owe to us, the business. So let's go ahead and look at all of these AI workflows a bit deeper. So our first AI workflow here, called Vendor Bills AP, will scan our inbox for any new invoices that companies bill us. It will then extract all the information from the invoice and the attachments and then update it inside our financials so that we know what we owe to other companies. And then every so often, our second workflow here will monitor that same expenses sheet and let us know if we're falling behind on any payments to other companies. This way we'll always know where we stand in terms of money that we owe other people or money that we've already paid. And to connect everything together, like I mentioned, we have a main AI agent node here so that whenever you want to update our expenses sheet by saying that we paid a certain bill or that we no longer have to pay something, we can simply chat with the AI agent to update that financial. Now let's move on to the fun part of running a business, which is looking at all the money that's actually owed to you through invoices or accounts receivable. So I have this broken out into 3 separate AI workflows. The first is just a very simple Stripe trigger. So this is assuming that you're using Stripe, but this can be integrated within any system or software, or you can have this connected manually, either just simply by typing in any invoices that you receive or have this connected to your inbox. But what this does is essentially keep track of all the invoices that you bill to other companies inside our revenue sheet here so that we know all the money that's owed to us and to make sure that people are paying us on time. I'll show you a bit later in this video, but we do have built-in due dates as well as amount dues to make sure that the account is essentially zeroed out by the time that they owe us the full amount of the revenue. And then again, we are integrated with Stripe so that whenever customers do essentially pay us that amount or even pay a portion of it, we'll have this reflected inside our revenue expense sheet automatically. And finally, just like the expense side, we also want to be alerted if our clients aren't paying us on time. So this built-in AR alert will essentially scan our revenue sheet every so often, every few days, for example, and then let us know if there's any customers that are falling behind on the due date and still have an active balance that's owed to us, the business. And if there are any clients that do owe us money, so they have an open account balance and the due date is past due, the AI model will essentially draft up a customized email tailored for that client, reminding them that their payment is due, they're delinquent in payments, and to have them get back to us as soon as possible. This ensures that we have a streamlined process and system to actually get all the revenue that is owed to us, the business. Now let's actually run through this team of AI agents so you can see how this works in real time. Now let's use our first main workflow here, which is expense tracking. So like I mentioned, what this will do will scan our emails and let us know of any expenses that we owe other companies, log that expense for us, first in Google Drive, and then inside our Google Sheets expense file so that we know what we owe to other companies and when we have to pay it. So what I've done is first created a fake invoice called N8N. So what this means is that we owe N8N $20. And then the reason for this is consulting A. We can see we owe them $20 for consulting A. The total due is here. And then if we open up this PDF attachment, we also have the due date, which is June 24th, 2025. Now, what we want to do is first save this file so that we have a receipt of what we owe other companies in case we ever need to reference it again. And then we also want to have this obviously inside our financials. And this way we can have a fully documented expense sheet. Next, what I have here is a completely blank expense file with the columns raw ID, which is how we know the unique ID of every single expense. We also have the date that it's posted, the vendor that we owe the amount to, the amount owed, due date, the category, description, and whether it's paid or not. So obviously we can assume that we just got this expense here so that it's not paid yet. So now let's go ahead and test the workflow, and we can see this happening in real time. So what it's doing is scanning our emails. They get that end-to-end invoice. It'll save that file to our Google Drive. And then from here, an AI model will update our expense sheet for us by taking out all the necessary information from that PDF and inputting it inside our expense sheet. So now let's head over back into Google Sheets, and we can see that all this information is now populated. So we have the raw ID, the date that it was posted, the vendor, we're presuming it's N8N in this case. We just owe them $20. The due date is in a month from now. And like I showed earlier, the description of this was consulting revenue, which they did for us. And it's called Consulting A. And again, we haven't paid this yet because we just got the expense right now. And then just to show you a very simple workflow, if we did just pay that amount, we can simply type into this AI agent chatbot. We paid $20 for N8N consulting, and then we just want them to update our AP sheet to reflect this. And then they'll go ahead and update our Google Sheets for us. Now let's test out our second workflow here, which again alerts us if we have any payments that we still need to make to other businesses. This is to make sure we don't fall behind on anything that we owe other people. Now heading back into the expense sheet, I changed a couple items manually just so I can showcase how this works. So the first is the due date. Even though we logged this today, I set the due date 2 days back. What this means is that this payment was actually due 2 days ago. And then I flipped this back to not paid yet. So we need to pay this as soon as possible. This payment of $20 hasn't been paid yet, and it was due 2 days ago. So now testing this workflow, the AI node will read through Google Sheets, figure out which expenses we need to pay, and then draft up an email for us. And then this is what the email looks like. We have a payment due alert billed to N8N because this is what we set the vendor name to be. And we have the ID in case we ever need to reference this payment through a Google Drive. We also see the date, which I set to be 5/10 for the date we received, which is today. But then I set the due date to be 2 days back. So this means it's technically late on payment. We see the payment amount is $20, as well as the description and the category. Now let's go ahead and test out our accounts receivable or invoice workflows. So like I mentioned earlier, this is going to help track all of the revenue that's owed to us, the business, in an accounting sense, so that all the information will be saved to our workbooks. So first, heading over into Google Sheets, this is what our AR sheet looks like. We have the invoice ID, when the invoice was issued, the customer that the invoice was issued to. So this is the customer that owes us money. Next, we have the amount remaining on their account. So assuming this is a services-based business and we're selling AI implementation, they could pay like $2,000 at a time until their account is zeroed out. Then we have the ultimate due date for when that service should be fully paid off, as well as the customer email in case we need to reach out to them. Next, I'll go ahead and create a makeshift invoice. So we'll go ahead and click test workflow, and then heading over into Stripe, I'll just go ahead and send this fake invoice of $10,000. So now inside N8N, we should see this begin triggering, and our Google Sheets will populate with all this information. And then inside our Google Sheets, we can first see the invoice ID, the date that it was issued, which is today. And then we have the test customer, as well as the amount remaining on their account, their due date, which is set a month from now, as well as their email so that we can reach out to them if we need to. Next, let's go ahead and assume that we want to update the invoice. So what I've done here is change the price from $10,000 to $500. This is maybe assuming that they had some kind of crazy coupon or something we missed. So if we go ahead and click update invoice here, this should automatically set inside N8N, and we should have now an updated Google Sheets with all the latest figures. So now if we head back into Google Sheets, we should see that the amount remaining is $500 rather than the $10,000 that we had earlier. And this is great for automatically tracking when customers either pay off a portion of the revenue owed to you or pay it off completely. This is just so you know a complete snapshot of revenues from your clients. And then finally, just like the expense side, we have revenue alerts as well. And this is to make sure that we personally get paid from our clients. So what I've done here inside our AR or revenue sheet is change the due date of this customer to be 5/8 rather than 5/10 or 6/10, which it was before. So this means that this customer with this ID called test customer technically owes us $500 as of 2 days ago. So heading back into our workflow, let's go ahead and test out this AR alerts. It'll assume the trigger, it'll read through our Google Sheets, see if we have any customers that do owe us money. And then from there, it'll send that specific customer an email letting them know that they owe us money. So we can see that the customer email here is nocodepathways@gmail.com. This is another email I have. So this is sent to nocodepathways@gmail.com. So assume that I am the customer that hasn't paid yet. what you'll get is a subject, and this is all crafted by the AI model, but they'll say that there's a payment reminder, invoice overdue. And what the AI here is going to do is send over a reminder email, and this is personalized to them, letting them know that their account is overdue and that they should settle this invoice as soon as possible. So here we can see that this was issued today, and there's an outstanding amount of $500 with a due date of 5/8, which again is what I changed it to. And then we want them to arrange the payment at its earliest convenience. This is to make sure that we have an automated system where AI can just keep churning out emails to these customers that haven't paid our revenues and are past due, so that we don't have to go months, weeks, or even years without collecting the payments that are owed to us. Plus, by having AI in the loop for everything, we can basically keep track of all of our revenues and expenses through one central node, like I mentioned at the very top of our workflow. And this is how we can have basically an umbrella of an AI system that can look through all the revenues and expenses of our company. And this will keep track of whether we have any delayed expenses or expenses we owe to people that we haven't paid, and vice versa. So revenues that people still haven't paid to us. And then if you want to go a step further in this workflow, you can also add in bank statement reconciliations. So we can simply do just add in another tool, have this AI agent read through your actual bank statements, which I can't upload because it's pretty confidential. But assuming that you want to upload this into your own system, you can have them read through your bank statements. And then you can cross-reference those with your AR as well as AP sheets to do a true reconciliation of your financials inside your company. Now, let me go over how I built the system at a high level so you can implement it either for your own business or for your clients. And again, this is all built within end-to-end, so you don't actually need any technical knowledge to implement any of these nodes within your workflow. So at the very top, like I mentioned, we have our main central AI agent, which basically is able to read through everything. So all those sheets that we worked on earlier, the AR and the AP, has access to either update or just read them to give us an analysis of our current financials. So this first trigger is just the built-in native end-to-end chat feature. So what you can do is just click add a trigger, and then from here you can just select the chat message. This way you can basically chat with our AI agent that has access to these revenues or expense sheets and have us either update or provide analyses for us. And then after this chat trigger, what I've added is an AI agent node. And like I mentioned, this is kind of like the main brain or hub. And this is able to read, update both our expenses as well as our revenue sheets. So if I double click into this node, you can go ahead and copy my prompt exactly if you want, or you can craft up your own. But what this is saying is that we're basically taking the connected chat trigger node. So we're taking whatever we write inside this window. So if you wrote hello, this hello would be sent to the AI agent. That's what is the user prompt here. But if we scroll down, we have the system message, and this is essentially instructions for this AI agent. And what we've written is that they're an expert accountant assistant with full access to our AR or revenue or AP expense Google Sheets. And then we have 4 tools. They can either read through our revenues and return data from the sheet. They can also read through our expenses and return data. They can also update our revenue sheet, and they can also update our expense sheet. And again, these are the 2 sheets that we worked with. So revenue invoices is the AR sheet. Now, obviously inside your workflows, you probably would have hundreds of line items. So the key thing to remember here is that AR is revenues coming to us. And this is based on all the Stripe invoices that we send out to other people. And then AP is all the expenses that we owe other people. And this is based on emails that people sent to us. And these are the amounts that we owe them. So all this agent is saying is that we have access to both of these sheets to either read or update. And then when the user asks for financial information, we can choose the proper tool to either get information or update information. And then finally, we just want to clarify ambiguous requests for the user. So which date range if they're unclear, to validate numeric fields. And then we also want them to respond in clear professional accounting language, because again, we want this to be a competent assistant. And then finally, we don't want them to modify a sheet unless we've explicitly confirmed the exact entry. And this is just so we don't really mess with the AR or AP sheets too much. We want this to be a source of truth for the company. So we don't want this AI agent to just accidentally wipe out like half of your financials. But that's also why later on inside this workflow, we have the ability to save files inside our Google Drive so that we always have receipts for every single thing that we're expensing. So now that we've covered this main AI agent, let's go ahead and move on to these child workflows, which again is all the things I showcased. So all these 5 workflows all do very different things. And the reason why we do this is because AI workflows, especially these that have a message model node, work best when they only have one specific task. So we could theoretically put all of these under the umbrella of this AI agent, but it's a lot more efficient just to have this AI agent read the final product, because if it has like 20 different tasks to do, sometimes the AI will fail at recognizing when to use which tool. And by segregating it out this way, we'll be able to confirm that each individual workflow will be able to excel in what it's doing so that we get a fair and full view of our financials. Let's first start on this left-hand side, which, like I mentioned, is everything related to expenses. Now, this first workflow suggests that we are getting all of our major expenses from emails and that vendors are billing us directly through attachments. But if you want to integrate with something else that you use, like Stripe or any other software that you want to monitor, then you can simply change this trigger to whichever you need. But I feel that this is probably the most viable for most small and medium-sized businesses. So this first node is a Gmail trigger, and all this is doing is scanning through our inbox every single minute. And each time it's scanned, it's going to look for these two filters. And if they do have the two filters, then the email will get passed over. So again, it's going to scan our Gmail account every single minute, and then they're going to first see if the email has an attachment and if the email includes the word invoice. Now, this can be more tailored to you, customized on what your vendor bills kind of look like. But from what I've seen, especially when dealing with my own businesses, this essentially captures all of the vendor bills that people will expense you out to your company. But if you want a more manual way of checking this, you can even do on message received and then set the Gmail account to be like invoices at yourbusiness.com. And then each time you get an invoice, you can manually forward that email over to that new email so that each time you get a new email from invoices at yourbusiness.com, then this will light up as well. But all I'm doing here is connecting this to my main Gmail account that includes all my emails, and then further filtering it down to first have an attachment because we need to be able to read the PDF invoice. And then we also want the words invoice because we want to know that this is an expense. And then finally, what we want to do is download the attachment because we want to save that receipt that they're billing to us, which is the PDF. So if we go ahead and click fetch test event, we should see the latest email with the attachment to either view or download. Now, as a next step, AI systems aren't infallible. So there could be instances where they incorrectly send you an invoice that you aren't meant to pay or vice versa. So what we want to do is add a human element by being able to upload all of the attachments to our Google Drive. In case if we ever review the financials or have this AI agent here review them, they can read through our Google Drive files and see if there is a file discrepancy or if something just isn't meant to be an invoice. So you can think of this as just a receipt, knowing that we have somewhere in our company folders a document that has proof that we do need to pay this amount. And again, each time this runs, each time we get a new vendor bill, it's going to save it directly in our Google Drive and then download it. So the first one is upload the file. All we want to do is add this Google Drive node, connect to your Google Drive account. The resource will be a file, and all we want to do is upload that attachment we just saw, which was attachment 0. So this is what the input data field name is, attachment 0, which matches up to the latest Gmail trigger. And attachment 0 works perfectly fine because each time you run this workflow, it's always going to start with attachment 0 and then attachment 1 and so on. But this workflow, again, it's running every single minute. So it's assuming that you are only getting one attachment at a time. So this should dynamically cover all of the invoices that you get so that you're able to download all of them to Google Drive. And then next for the file name, you can choose this to be anything you want. But what I did is open up the schema and then you can just drag over, for example, the subject of the file. So the email subject here is updates to end-to-end invoice. Just drag this over and this is what the file name would be inside your Google Drive. And then finally, you can connect this to your Google Drive. And what you want to do is just create a parent folder called invoices so that each time you save an invoice inside of Google Drive, you know where to find this. It's all inside one parent invoice folder. So this will be your source of truth in case you ever need to go back and see why you were billed a certain amount on this specific day. And now that we have the file uploaded to Google Drive, we then have to download the file so that our workflow here will be able to read the contents of the file. So here in this third node, if we test this step, all we're doing is downloading that file attachment 0 that we got from the previous steps. Here you can see we have the data, and then if we go to the JSON, it has all of the data information. Now our fourth step here is to extract all the information from the PDF. So this can work either for PDFs or images. However, if you want to do images, you should also add in an OCR request. But most invoices or vendor bills that you get typically are in a PDF format, so this node should work just fine. It's called extract from file, and all we want to do is take that data file we just downloaded and then extract all the text from it. So if you text a step here, it should now show in the output all of the text from that file. So inside the text here, we have the invoice, the date, the customer. This is all generated by us in the previous example. And then finally, since we have the text from the invoice, we can send this to OpenAI or any AI model of your choice to have them first analyze the invoice for us, bucket all the information, and then log it inside our financials. So inside this OpenAI message model, all I'm doing is messaging a model. You can do any model you like. I like 4.1 mini since that's a more recent model that OpenAI has released. And you can copy my prompt here exactly or from your own. But what I'm saying is that you're an expert accounts payable processor. And we're first providing them with a single string containing all of the text extracted from a PDF attachment. Again, this should be the invoice attachment. And then all we want them to do is read through the AP invoice. From the text, we want them to extract the date. We also want the due date that the invoice should be paid on. We want the amount due for the invoice, a description, the name of the vendor billing us, as well as the category. Now, it's important to have an AI model connected here because every invoice you get will look different, especially from companies that have different types of formats. So that's why we need an intelligent AI model to be able to read through the text of the invoice and take out all this information for us. And then finally, we're going to set a raw ID. And then because these are new invoices we just get, we're going to default all of these to be not paid yet. So if we head back over into our AP bills, you can see that we have, first again, the raw ID, the date, vendor, amount, due date, category, description. These are all generated by the AI model. And then we want this to always default to be not paid yet until we message the AI model here up top. Once we do finally pay the invoice, that we can mark this as paid in this section here. So that covers the prompt. And then finally, what you want to do is output the contents as JSON. And the reason why we do this is so that we can pass all of this data over neatly to our Google Sheets. So like I mentioned, we're giving this AI model the raw contents of the PDF text, and then they're able to take out the raw ID, date, due date, vendor amount, description, category, and paid. And if you notice, all of these match directly to our Google Sheets here: raw ID, date, vendor, amount, due date, category, description, and paid. Now this is intentional because in the next step, all we can do is simply take all of these outputs that the AI model gave us and then input them directly to Google Sheets. So what I did is add in a Google Sheets node, append or update a row, and then just select your Google Sheets file. So all I would do is just create an OCR AP file with these 7 columns. Heading back here, if we do map each column randomly, we match on the raw ID, and then we can simply just drag and drop all of the columns. So here, the raw ID goes to raw ID, the date goes to date here, and then the vendor matches to the vendor. So again, this is all of the contents that were created in this previous step from the AI agent node. And then finally, since everything is all neatly formatted in JSON, which is the key, we can just simply drag these all over so that our Google Sheets will automatically populate with the information that the AI model produced for us. And this rounds out our accounts payable automation with AI, so that each time we get an email, they'll first see if it's an invoice. If it is, they'll save the invoice to our Google Drive in case we ever need to reference the original file. We're then going to read the invoice, send all the information to an AI model, which will then extract all the data we need into our Google Sheets. Now our next workflow here, again, is just to manage this AP sheet that we just created. So assuming this runs like 20 times from when you first started it, we also want to make sure that we are paying all of these on time. And again, if we do want to pay this, we can just message the main AI model, but assume there are some that say no and the due date is upcoming. What this next workflow does, again, is that it schedules every single day or every single hour, week, however frequent you want to do this workflow. It's going to read through Google Sheets, get all the data, send it to an AI model, and figure out if we are falling behind on any payments. So our first trigger here is a schedule trigger. Now, this is just how often we want this workflow to run. I have this on every single day. So this means that every day we'll get a neatly formatted email letting us know if we are falling behind on any payments and how much we need to pay. And then after this, every single day, what it's going to do is read through Google Sheets. So add in a Google Sheets node, and then the operation is to get rows, which means this is to read all the rows inside our Google Sheets. So again, select the AP sheet you created. And then what we want to do is filter for the column paid. So this is the last column we had here. We don't care about all of the vendors that we have already paid for. So that's why we're adding this filter. If we already paid it, we don't need this in the update saying, hey, we need to pay this or the due date is past due. This only concerns us if we haven't paid them yet. So that's why we add this filter of not paid. And then inside the next node, what we want to do is aggregate all the data. Now this is only one column, but say if we had 5 non-paid, it'll aggregate all of these into one single item. So here, it'll pass it over to an OpenAI message model node, which again, we can type in our own prompt for them to determine who we need to pay and how we format this email. So what I've written inside this prompt is that you're an expert accounts payable assistant. We want to give them today's date, and this is just so we know, or they know, exactly how many days we are from the due date, or if they are past due. And then here, we're going to just say all the data we're giving them. So we're giving them an array of bill objects where paid equals no, because again, this is the filter. So what this means is that these are only items that we haven't paid for yet. So we have the vendor, raw ID, date, amount, category, and description, and then just simply drag over the data. So this is data 0 here. So what I've done here is drag over the data so that they can actually read through all your Google Sheets. And then what we want them to do is for each bill whose due date is before today, we want to draft an internal email to the finance team reminding us to pay. So the output here is first A2, which is our finance team. You can change this to be any email that you want to actually send these updates to. The next is the subject, which is payment due alert. And then finally the bill too, and then we want the vendor name. And then the body is to be formatted in proper HTML. So this is the final result saying that here's a reminder that the following bill is overdue for payment. This ensures that we have streamlined processes for getting all of our vendors paid and that we're not falling behind on any expenses. And then finally, since we have this all neatly formatted in JSON, so just like last time, you want to output the content as JSON. What this does is break out your content to 3 separate fields. We have 2, we have the subject, and then we have the body. Because this is all neatly formatted inside this Gmail node, all we need to do is drag over 2 to 2, subject to subject, and then body to the message. So again, this will run every single day. If there are any past due, it'll first run through the AI model, and then the AI model will draft up a customized email for us to send to our internal finance team. Now let's move over to revenues. So with revenue, I have this set on Stripe, but you can have this implemented within whichever software or system that you are using. But I find that most people do use Stripe, especially for processing payments. So this is what we have here. Our very first workflow is super simple, no AI involved. All this is doing is that whenever we get or create a new Stripe invoice to bill to other customers, it'll first format the date and the time, and then it'll send all that information to Google Sheets. So looking at this deeper, this trigger occurs again once you create a new invoice. So anytime you send an invoice to a customer, this will automatically run this workflow. And what we're doing is first getting all the data from the invoice. So we have things like the amount due, the amount paid for the customer, the due date, as well as all the other information that you personally fill out through stripe.com. And then after this, you need to format the date and time. Now this is specific to N8N, and that's because all of the data you get from Stripe, some of their date formats are in this format instead, like this 174698. It's not in proper month, day, year format. So all we're doing is dragging this over and then changing this to a date format. So this is super simple. Like there's a created date. All you have to do is drag this over. So rather than it saying 1746982358 here, it'll change this to a more readable month, day, year format. And then we want to do this for both the created date as well as the due date of the invoice. So this is the same exact thing, but rather than showing the created date, if we scroll down, this is referencing the due date here, which ends in 4377. As we can see, just simply drag this over to the due date. And then for the format, month, day, year, you can change this to anything else you want. And then make sure to name this formatted due date. And then once we have all those fields, we can neatly send all this information over to Google Sheets. So the values to send here, you can choose which values you want. Now on the Stripe trigger, they gave you a ton of different information. So we have things like the ID, which is obviously important, but we also have things like amount paid, amount due, account name, customer name. So you can just pick and choose which field you want, but just keep in mind that whichever values that you do want to keep, you should update them inside this section here. So in AR, you want to make sure that this ties to your columns. So heading back here, our columns are first the invoice ID, the date it was issued, the customer of the invoice, the amount remaining on their account, as well as the due date. And then finally, we have the customer email. Now we need this because we want to send a customized email to these customers if they do end up forgetting to pay or they're delinquent on their payments back to us. So this is the automated workflow for whenever we create or send invoices out to our customers in Stripe. And then next, this is a more simple workflow. This just happens whenever we update invoices. So for example, if a customer pays the invoice, this will automatically trigger update our Google Sheets with the new amount due on their account. So if we look at this AR section here, right now we have, for example, 500 amount remaining. And if they paid this through Stripe, then this would automatically update to 0 once this triggers. So again, this just listens for whenever our invoices do get updated, either when customers pay or when we change details ourselves. So if we were to change a detail ourselves, all this is doing is running the Stripe trigger once again whenever our invoice is updated. And then once again, we want to take the date and time. This time we only need the created date. This is assuming that the due date doesn't change. All we're doing is changing the created date since an updated invoice is technically a new invoice. And then finally from here, we want to update our Google Sheets. So once again, drag over all those fields, but customer matches to customer, invoice to invoice, date, amount remaining, and customer email. This matches to all the fields we have here. And all this is saying is that whenever we update our invoice, we're going to first check the Stripe details once again to see if any of those fields did change. Some of the most common ones, again, is amount due. This can be reduced or set all the way to 0 if they fully paid out their account balance. Sometimes we can also change the price or the amount remaining. We can also change the services that they ordered. So this is all being updated within our Google Sheets in real time. And then we have our final workflow here, which is AR alerts. And just like the expense side, we again want to be alerted if any customers are not paying us on time. So what we're doing is scheduling this trigger to occur every single day. So every one day, it's going to read through our Google Sheets we just created, which is this AR sheet here. And then once we read the Google Sheets, we want to aggregate all the data so it's in one data point and then send it over to an OpenAI message model. So this AI model will then read through all of our Google Sheets. And this is the prompt we're going to give it. You're an expert accounts receivable assistant. We want to first give them today's date, and then we give them an input of objects. So this just ties to our Google Sheets. All this is saying is that we're passing over all this information to an AI model. And then for each invoice whose due date is before today, we want them to draft a payment reminder email. So again, this AI model is going to check through our Google Sheets and then find out whose due date is before today, meaning that they are past due. And they're going to draft out a customized email reminding these customers to pay. So first we have the to, subject, and the body. So again, we want to format this as JSON so they can provide 3 separate fields. We have a to, we have the subject, and we have the body. So again, the AI model is crafting all of this to be personalized for that customer. All we're doing is sending over the data from the Google Sheets, and then they will first fill this in with information on which invoice is past due, and then let them know that their outstanding balance is XYZ, and they need to avoid any late fees or service interruptions. And obviously you can customize this to fit your own business, whether it be a services-based or more product-based business. And this concludes a case study on how you can implement AI and AI automation to replace an accountant either in your own business or for your clients' businesses. And like I mentioned earlier, you can customize this to fit into your own systems because obviously not everyone is going to use Stripe. Not everyone uses invoice-based systems or vendor bills in this sort of format, but this does give you the foundations on how you can implement AI to connect to your own company's financials and to make sure that you have automation on every step along the way. This can significantly reduce the roles or even replace the role outright of an accountant, especially within a small or medium-sized business. And you can always add more to this AI system. So for example, if you want to upload bank statements for reconciliation, you can add that simply as a tool within this AI agent here so that whenever you have the final AR or AP financials, you can first check them against your own bank statements, find out if there are any discrepancies, and if everything looks good, you can also upload these to your company's P&L so that you have a properly formatted and accurate company financial for every single month or quarter. And if you found this video helpful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more AI agent and AI building content. And like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, if you do want to join an active community of AI builders, make sure to click the link in the description.